Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 44 of Bible Stories for Atheists. I am Josh.
I'm Linz. I'm sorry. I'm Linz.
An Easter egg in your throat. And we are your guides to the authentically awful stories, literally, literarily littering the Bible. We're not talking about the Bible today, really.
Not really.
We're talking about Easter.
Easter.
Because it's Easter, if you're not aware.
Highest of holy days.
Yeah, right under several others. So yeah, we're digging into the origins of Easter, and you might be like, oh, I know where Easter really comes from, but you might not.
You might not.
You might not.
You might not. Just like the Bible, it might all be made up.
Right. Yeah.
Odds are.
Yeah. Even if you've been an atheist for quite a while, you might have some misconceptions about it. So we'll at least throw out some other possibilities you might not have heard. And then we also got a review.
Yes.
Recently on Apple Podcasts.
We love reading these.
We do.
So our most recent review on Apple Podcasts starts thusly. Great non-theistic edutainment. And I appreciate that compliment because I don't know that either of us ever thought of this as being educational.
In any sense.
Not at all. Great fun coverage of the religious text without the pressure to buy into it. I've wanted to know more about these stories, but don't really have the time or the fortitude required to get through them myself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Also nice having insight from two formerly religious hosts on how different things have been interpreted by different branches of Christianity over time. Pertinent to this exact podcast about Easter. Fun book club vibes.
Which is really an interesting idea.
It is.
I never really thought about it before, the idea of people like reading along with us or something like that, you know?
Or even like, I mean, I've never attended an actual book club, but I would imagine that it is very much just like having a conversation about what you read back and forth. And while I have not read the Bible, like I still feel like we have that.
Well, I feel like 90% of the people who go to a book club haven't read the material
also
either.
Very true. There's the one person who spent the time,
who organized it,
who at the beginning of the book club probably is like, here's the plot of the chapter we were supposed to read last week. And I know none of you did. So I'll just tell you what happened and then we can talk about it.
It's a weird thing that we did where we all signed up for homework.
Right.
Even though we're adults. Yeah.
It's like, I think the idea is that it forces you to read.
Oh, yeah. As somebody who grew up Christian, I understand accountability well. And I actually, like, that's what rings true about that review for me, too, is like, if it wasn't for this podcast, I wouldn't be reading any of this shit.
No, absolutely not.
But it keeps me going back, and I'm always, despite how much it's annoying and it takes forever to do it and to read through the stuff and to do research and stuff. But, you know, it gets me asking questions about this stuff. And, like, I learned some really fascinating stuff.
And listen, the best defense is a good offense. I'm not saying that, like, if you're Christian, like, I'm not going to try and debate you on your beliefs. Believe what you want to believe. I'm specifically talking about the people who are using the Bible as a weapon to implement their own personal beliefs. Very good example of this is very recently somebody on our local city subreddit posted that they got dropped a leaflet about abortion in their mailbox, which don't do that. It's super illegal. You're not allowed to put stuff in people's mailboxes. But there was one person who brought up the idea of God talking about abortions in the Bible, which we've discussed, right?
Right, yeah.
If a woman gets pregnant, she's not sure who the dad is, then she's supposed to drink this elixir and it'll terminate the pregnancy, whatever, something like that.
If it was from another man, the pregnancy will be terminated. Otherwise, it'll be fine.
Right, something like that. What was clearly a religious person who probably hasn't actually read the Bible mentioned that it doesn't say that in the Bible. It just mentions a curse, like the woman is cursed. And the person's like, actually, no. Here's exactly what it says. Yeah. And when I say
bitter water, she was to drink bitter water.
Right. So that's why I think what you're doing specifically, I mean, my role in this is just fucking bullshit. But it's to lighten things up.
I wouldn't put it that way.
It's to lighten things up a little bit because, man, oh man, is the Bible boring.
I nerd out on it, and then you kind of bring me back to reality.
But so your part in this,
I'm
though.
like, isn't it fascinating that there was only 3,000 Levites in this census?
No, I don't care. But I know that all of the time that you take to go through this and the mood that it puts you in sometimes after reading the Bible. And so I appreciate what you're doing. And I think it's important, if you're not going to read the Bible and you are a non-believer or somebody who's coming from belief, to not necessarily our podcast, although if you're hearing this, you're listening to it, so thank you.
Yeah.
But like a podcast like ours, where you are learning things where you can have a good debate.
Right.
With somebody.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important. Being able to go back and forth with somebody from an educated standpoint and not just be like, well, what you say is bullshit, so
Right.
I can't believe anything you say. But that doesn't work.
What I've been really surprised about since we started doing this podcast is how easy it really is to know these beliefs better than 90% of the
Right.
people who hold them.
Right. So thanks for everyone for listening and everyone who's participated with us in our socials, everyone who gives us a review, anyone who shares this podcast. Like, we're all doing it together. And I think it's really great.
So on this generic Sunday that doesn't have any significance whatsoever, strap in and strap on for episode 44, Chocolate Covered Zombie Jesus.
Are you ready?
Yeah, we're already recording.
Oh, I should put my headphones on.
Yeah,
Usually it takes you way longer than this to get ready.
I'm highly efficient.
I put my headphones on and then I sit here and I can't hear anything for like a good 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, we were ready about 15 minutes ago.
That's a lie. You're lying. Don't
Been
lie.
recording for
Big
15
liar.
minutes. We're gonna have 15 minutes of you just sitting there on your phone while I stare at you.
Well, that sounds like your problem.
No, it's the audience's problem. Happy Easter.
Happy Sunday.
Yeah. We're actually recording this on Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday. Yes.
Yeah.
In which, if you go to a Catholic mass on Sunday, you receive a palm to take care of.
Right. And as anybody who's watched Impractical Jokers knows, the palm frond is sacred.
The palm frond is sacred. The palm frond is sacred. The palm frond is sacred.
What do you say?
The palm frond is sacred. I was going to look up Palm Sunday because I don't actually know much about Palm Sunday other than you get a palm. And it's about a story we talked about already. Go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah,
Whatever one that was.
I should have figured out which episode that was before this, but I haven't. So therefore,
Go back from the beginning
Yeah.
and listen to all of our...
yes, if you want to know what Palm Sunday is all about, you're going to have to listen to about 40 episodes of our podcast.
Well, it would have been one of the Jesus episodes.
Yeah, that'll narrow it down.
It was the one where we rode two asses
Yeah.
because he likes to ride some ass.
In one version of the story, it was two asses. In another version, it was one. And, the Bible's perfect. Anywho, the origins of Easter. As most people have probably asked themselves at some point in their life, what does Jesus have to do with bunnies laying eggs?
Right. The bunnies don't lay the eggs, Josh. That's a Cadbury.
Some people seem to think that the bunnies do lay the eggs.
That's fucked up for a lot of reasons.
I mean, where else do bunnies come from?
Other bunnies.
I mean, that's true for laying eggs too, I think.
In my personal history,
Mhm.
like Easter was never a huge deal. We weren't even really like the sort of Catholics or Christians or whatever we were at the time, or whatever religion my mom decided she wanted to be a part of at the time, like the type of family that actually ever went to church or Easter mass at all. I remember like some of them from when I was very little, but like barely, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like really the whole thing was like dyeing the Easter eggs, hiding the eggs, and getting the Easter basket. Like that was the whole point of Easter in my young brain. And Cadbury cream eggs.
Isn't it weird that his birth gets more attention like to Jesus really than on the day that it was supposed to be that he resurrected from the dead?
I don't know that that's entirely true though.
Well, none of it's true.
No, I mean, I don't know that it's true that
Yeah.
Christmas gets more attention consumer wise.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, sure.
Because it's gift giving. And
Yeah.
Easter, if you go to the store
Yeah.
and just look at Easter shit these days, so is Easter. Like the
Yeah.
Easter baskets that fucking kids get, a lot of times kids get bikes, right? Because it's spring and they've grown out of their old bikes. So it's like the
Yeah.
perfect holiday to give them a new bike.
Right. Why not?
Why not two bikes?
Why isn't
Jesus rode two asses?
Yeah.
Can your kid fucking tandem of two bikes?
right?
That would be the Jesus way.
That's what Jesus would do.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to be Christ-like, you have to ride two bikes at once.
Right.
You know, considering like so he was fucking born. You know, everybody's born. You know, it's not that.
Well, he was born to a virgin, Joshua.
The fact that he was born really doesn't mean too much. But the fact that he rose from the fucking dead,
yeah.
you know, and to save us, our souls, not all of us,
Right.
very specific people's
Yes.
souls, the people who don't masturbate, to save their souls. Like, why is that not the one that's like, let's give everybody gifts?
Well,
you know,
yeah,
like,
I always thought of like Christmas as like the fun Christian holiday,
yeah,
and Easter is like the very serious
really?
Christian
I
holiday.
don't see it as serious, but
Well, yeah,
That's
like it's
interesting.
just like the if you're Catholic, like
well,
This-
they're all
this-
serious.
this
then.
event lasts like a long time though.
Oh, that's right, because you got Lent in
Lent,
there too.
and then you have Ash Wednesday, which
Yeah.
is the start of Lent, I think.
I feel like we've covered this at
Yeah.
some point. I can't remember.
And then you have
now.
Palm Sunday, right, which
Yeah.
is the week before, and then you have Good Friday, which is when he dies or
Yeah.
whatever, and then
Yeah, it
and
was
then
a good Friday. Like, as we talked about when we talked about that,
Right.
It was a good Friday for everybody else,
but Jesus.
But
And then you
Jesus.
have Easter, and
Yeah.
it's like you've been going to church a lot
oh,
and like
yeah,
eating fucking fish like
Yeah.
a crazy person every Friday.
just for some reason, even though it's not in the Bible, God has an issue with all other meat.
And people give up like junk food for a month or
Yeah.
whatever, or Facebook. I don't know. That seems to be the thing these days.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it like I never really participated in any of those cult activities.
yeah. You never gave anything up for Lent.
No, we never. I mean, that wasn't. We didn't. We were just like in name only
Yeah,
Catholics, and
it was actually something Protestants would do too.
yeah,
Like I knew a lot of people who gave shit up for Lent.
right. And there's a
I never
second
understood
Easter.
why.
There's like the Orthodox Easter, which is like the Sunday after this coming up Easter today.
The Orthodox Easter,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So-
we're going to talk a little bit about that briefly.
So it seemed in my mind it was always like there was Christmas, and like if you were really into it, you did like the Advent and shit like that. But like Easter was like a whole event, and it was
Yeah.
seemed very serious because it's a whole thing that is around a death, and then he is risen sort of thing. There was always special Easter food, hot cross buns, and
I just heard of those recently
Hot cross
when I
buns?
was like going through stuff for this episode. I never heard of hot cross buns. I don't think I've ever had
Yeah.
them. No.
little blocks of cream cheese that are in the shape of a lamb.
Is that what they are?
No,
Oh,
that's an additional food item.
Oh.
That oftentimes
blocks
you will
of
see
cream cheese,
that are shaped like a lamb.
and you just eat that.
You eat the lamb.
It's a like
Well,
when
you
you say
eat
a
it on-
block of cream
Yeah,
cheese.
you eat it on shit. You just don't
Oh.
spoon.
Is it like sweet cream cheese?
I don't
Or is it-
remember.
Oh, okay.
It seemed like something
just
grandma's
Philadelphia?
made.
Okay.
Yeah, it probably had like, when grandmas make shit like that, there's like pimento or like and flakes of coconut and mini marshmallows and that shit. So I don't know that I
I
ever.
thought you were gonna say flakes of cocaine.
No, I didn't have cool grandmas. If anything, it was just covered in vodka.
Cigarette ash.
Yes.
Tastes like Easter.
Grandma. Smells like home. Anyway, what are your like, how did your family celebrate Easter?
It was a lot of, I don't think I ever did like an Easter egg hunt or anything like that. We did when I was a little kid, definitely colored eggs with my grandma and my mom for a little while. I feel like we quit that pretty well when I was still pretty young, but the Easter egg baskets, like we talked about this. I'm not positive I'm not getting one.
It's true. Your mom still does make Easter baskets for everybody.
I can't remember if like COVID might have cut that off because she was living out of town during that time. So I don't know if she's going to do it again, but it really has been like well into adulthood that us kids were getting
Easter baskets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stopped poor Connor, any reason to like not have to buy him that bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, you're too old for
right.
Easter. Like, do you want to talk?
He's like, I'm 7.
You want to talk about Easter bunny? Yeah.
Yeah. You give him like one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
No, children don't need copious amounts of candy to celebrate the
8 times a year.
The resurrection of Christ.
Yeah. Well, how else will they learn to celebrate it?
That feels like a meat-based holiday, right? Why are we giving out candy?
Right.
I feel like you need something substantial on a day where somebody came back to life.
Yeah.
You need to eat some
human.
flesh. Yes.
Eat human. Should be a cannibalistic day.
Oh, man.
I mean, I don't know if you remember that, but like when we talked, when we were going through the Gospels, there were several passages where he was talking about eating of his flesh and stuff like that. And it straight up sounded cannibalistic the way he was describing it.
It's been translated as these stupid little wafers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, give me a pork rind at least.
And grape juice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we're not advocating for cannibalism.
No,
just to be clear.
God, humans are terrible for you, I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
Like, fat content is off the scales.
It depends on the nationality of the human you're getting. Probably.
Maybe.
Americans are going to be
the worst.
Terrible.
By far. Yeah.
Riddled with lead and PFAS.
And syphilis.
Yeah.
Microplastics.
Yeah. It's all those little fucking beads that were in toothpaste forever, you know.
All of our soaps.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Lord knows I ate plenty of that. Have you ever wondered where does the date come from?
Okay, actually, no, I haven't ever wondered, but that's not so. There's a lot of.
It's reasonable to not have ever cared about it.
No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff associated with Easter that in my head I've made correlations to, and being a girl of a certain age and having really connected to the movie The Craft, fallen into Wiccanism for a short period of time in my first couple of years of college.
Yeah.
Like, I know a little bit of the background of like the origins of Easter, but the date is not one. I mean, obviously, the spring, right?
Yeah.
The spring equinox happens around this time, which I'm sure has something to do with it. But
yeah. So, according to Wikipedia, Easter and its related holidays are movable feasts, not falling on a fixed date. Its date is computed based on a lunar solar calendar, which means a solar year plus moon phase, similar to the Hebrew calendar. The first Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, which we've talked about several times, it's kind of like where they started coming up with like the canon of Christianity.
Right. Where Santa Claus punched somebody in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. Slapped him. But yeah, if you watch the Kirk Cameron movie, he was all fucking like Lord of the Rings out and beat up a guy. So yeah, First Council of Nicaea established only 2 rules, namely independence from the Hebrew calendar. So they're not going to be reliant on the Hebrew calendar for when this is, and worldwide uniformity. So everybody has to do it on the same day.
Oh, well, that didn't pan out.
Yeah, not exactly. No. No details for the computation were specified because why would you want to
Right.
figure that out?
Right.
These were worked out in practice, a process that took centuries and generated a number of controversies. It has come to be the first Sunday after the ecclesiastical full moon that occurs on or soonest after the 21st of March.
All right.
So this is why Orthodox Easter is on a different day.
Gotcha. So a question you're probably not prepared for.
Okay.
What makes a full moon ecclesiastical?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought about looking it up and I was like, there's only so deep.
What does
I'm gonna go,
ecclesiastical mean again?
Of or relating to a church, especially an organized institution. An ecclesiastical full moon is formally the 14th day of the ecclesiastical lunar month. There you go.
Well, that really cleared things up for me. Thanks.
Yeah. This clears it up. In an ecclesiastical lunar calendar.
Okay.
So,
So the church has its own lunar calendar.
I guess. Yeah.
Is it different than our lunar? Like, is their moon different than our moon?
Yeah. It only goes back 6,000 years. So
the moon.
All of it. All of it.
All of it.
That's how they come up with the dates. They just kind of
throw a dart at the fucking board.
They argued their way to it eventually, apparently.
Okay.
Obviously, the reason for the season is because Jesus was killed, in theory, and then resurrected and all that. But that was during the Passover.
Right.
The Jewish Passover. So it has ties to when that is. But the Passover changes every year. So the name for Easter, according to Wikipedia, the English term is derived from the Saxon spring festival Eostre.
Yeah, isn't it Eostre?
Eostre.
Because it's a long E, right?
Yeah, it's an E with a line over it.
That's a long E.
But yeah,
right.
I don't know if that's, Well, either way, we'll call it Eostre. Easter is also linked to the Jewish Passover by its name, Pascha or Pascal, and by much of its symbolism, as well as by its position in the calendar. In most European languages, both the Christian Easter and the Jewish Passover are called the same name, Pascha or Pascal. And in older English versions of the Bible as well, the term Easter was used to translate Passover. So they really use the terms interchangeably, apparently. Okay. Eostre. Eostre is a West Germanic spring goddess. The Old English deity Eostre is attested solely by Bede in the 8th century work, The Reckoning of Time, where Bede, who was an English monk and saint, states that during basically the equivalent month of April, pagan Anglo-Saxons had held feasts in Eostre's honor, but that this tradition had died out by his time, replaced by the Christian Pascal month celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. So Bede, aka Saint Bede the Venerable, and it's Bede, seems to.
You don't want to call him Betty?
I know, but it's Bede. It is. I checked. It is pronounced Bede. Seems to be where we get basically the most of the information we have on Eostre, almost all of it.
It's funny because when you said that the source came from Bede, I literally was like imagining like this very intricate like tapestry with beadwork.
Oh no!
Where somebody had beaded the entire history of Eostre into a tapestry, and I was like fascinated by the idea of it, and then you dashed it pretty quickly.
No, it's literally one paragraph in this book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
In fact, in 1958, inscriptions were discovered dating back to 150 to 250 AD about a triad of goddesses who seemed to be where Eostre was derived from. Until that discovery, apparently a lot of historians thought Bede had just made up Eostre. So it was like nobody could find anything on Eostre besides from this one paragraph that Bede wrote about until they found these inscriptions that talked about.
Sometimes in like Celtic and Germanic history, like that stuff doesn't make it to a book, but like your grandma's grandma has been telling that story and passing it down since the beginning of time.
Right.
There's no like verbal.
I mean, you can't really trust it.
Yeah.
Because like that stuff can, somebody could have started saying it back in the 1800s, and we just think that it goes back. I was actually this is totally a tangent, but I was listening to Behind the Bastards, this really good podcast, not to talk about other podcasts on ours, but I
mean, you only have to listen to us for an hour every other week, so I think they have time to listen to other podcasts.
Yeah, they did a really good episode. They did a really good series of episodes. It was like 6 parts or something like that on the origins of the Illuminati, and it was fascinating. Where it was like it started. I can't remember now. I want to say it was like. It might have been the 1600s. No, it was the 1700s because it was right around the American Revolution. They were talking about the Masons were doing the same thing at this time, where like they would tell people they were 1,000 years old and stuff like that, and invented all these stories about it, and it was all bullshit. They had literally just started up, and that was a big thing though, to give yourself credibility, to get members and stuff. And to say that there's this hierarchy and stuff when really it was just this one dude who came up with it, Anyway, it was really interesting. And it's worth
amazing that one person can tell a story, and hundreds of thousands of years later, even people are still buying into that crazy story.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wait. It drives this whole podcast.
Yeah. Some people think that Eostre is where we get hares and eggs as well. There's speculation that instead of a hare that they used to celebrate birds, and it turned into a hare at some point. Therefore, we get rabbits laying eggs. But I was really surprised at how much of it was totally just speculation. And we actually see in the Wikipedia, it says the earliest evidence of the Easter hare, Osterhase, I'm guessing is how that is pronounced, was recorded in southwest Germany in 1678.
Wow.
By the professor of medicine, and I really like this guy's name, George Frank von Frankenau. But it remained unknown in other parts of Germany until the 18th century. So 1600s, late 1600s.
Is when the hair popped up?
Apparently.
Do you think that he was also a guy who bred rabbits and had a glut that he needed to get rid of? So he was like, do you guys know in our history, we're Germans, right? German pagans, Germanic pagans, Easter actually is this pagan holiday, and rabbits, because they fuck a lot, were a symbol of fertility, and therefore we should make them a symbol. You want a rabbit? I have them for real cheap.
What if I dip it in chocolate?
Oh, you want an egg with it too?
Yeah.
I got some eggs.
Yeah, it laid the eggs.
The rabbit laid the egg.
The rabbit laid the egg.
Magical.
Why would you not want to put this in your mouth?
Rabbit magic. Hassenpfeffer.
Yeah.
You want some
Hassenpfeffer?
You want some Hassenpfeffer?
Osterhase.
Hassenpfeffer.
So anyway, so that's Eostre. Now, there's also Ostara, which you've heard of.
Yes, because again,
yeah,
I'm a woman of a certain age.
Yeah,
who enjoyed the craft.
You want to hear something?
And briefly fell into Wiccanism.
You want to hear something crazy about it though?
Yeah.
Apparently, there's no evidence this was ever a real deity.
No,
like nobody ever.
Well, Ostara is a holiday.
Yeah. I think it's become a holiday because of
the
tale of this, but
based on the goddess Eostre, right? Her, and then it gets translated differently depending on what people say, I mean, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, no, sure, but I saw that the guy who came up with Ostara, it was not really like based on much to say that this was actually a deity that people worshipped and stuff like that. It might have just been a name that was kind of out there,
right? That's the thing, is like pagans worship like a multitude of gods, but a lot of times it's more like the season. Like God is like basically a representation of a season.
An embodiment of a season.
Yeah. So Ostara, or whatever it came to be, is the celebration of the spring equinox, right? So it's all about fertility and planting. It's planting season, right? And it's highly likely, based on human history, that going back to like the beginning of Homo sapiens, that there was likely probably things like this from even way back then, because people didn't have calendars. So like crocuses, right? The little purple flowers that pop up first. We have them, even though it's snowed a bunch, even since the first ones came out, but they're still out there and persistent, are like the first kind of symbol that spring is here. So that would be your calendar, like those sort of things. And then you would have this big festival to celebrate, like, oh, yay, we're not going to die from fucking winter now, you know?
We've by far gotten through the worst of it.
Right. You know, it's time to plant our food. Especially once you started getting into like the sort of, I mean, people were hunter-gatherers for a really long time. So like they weren't just roaming around planting crops. But when people started becoming agricultural, like it was a good way to celebrate like the beginning of the planting season and stuff like that. And
before the agricultural revolution, it would have been
all these animals are going to have babies now. We're going to have more food.
But also you would have celebrated like it's going to get way easier to gather.
Right. It makes sense to celebrate that sort of thing, right? Yeah. Living in Michigan, I certainly want to celebrate when it finally fucking stops snowing.
Yeah. Which happens around August.
Just in time for it to start snowing again. Yeah. In my head, in my brief interlude with paganism, all of the holidays, so Yule, Ostara, Beltane, and whatever the other ones are. There's a couple other ones. There's like a fall one that I can't remember the name of. We're all based around a season. The only reason for the season was the season.
But yeah, I would imagine there's, obviously there's different kinds of pagans out there too, because
pagans or anything that's
the
not
Greeks were pagans,
yeah.
and they had a ton of gods that didn't necessarily have to do with seasons or anything like that. But
sorry, I think I'm very much speaking of like Germanic, Celtic.
Yeah. Origins.
Yeah. Pre-European pagans.
Yeah. Eostre kind of inevitably will take you to the goddess Ishtar when you start digging into this stuff. There's a meme that goes out every Easter that shows like a sculpture of Ishtar, and it says how Ishtar is like the origins of Easter, and she was a fertility goddess from Mesopotamia and stuff like that. So looking into it, Ishtar is actually under the name Inanna, Inanna, on Wikipedia, because that was her original name.
Okay.
Inanna is an ancient Mesopotamian goddess of love, beauty, war, and fertility. She is also associated with sex, divine law, and political power. She was originally worshipped in Sumer under the name Inanna, and later by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians under the name Ishtar. Inanna was worshipped in Sumer at least as early as the Uruk period, 4000 BCE to 3100 BCE. But she had very little cult activity before the conquest of Sargon of Akkad, who we've actually talked about before. During the post-Sargonic era, she became one of the most widely venerated deities in the Sumerian pantheon, with temples across Mesopotamia. The cult of Inanna/Ishtar, which may have been associated with a variety of sexual rites, was continued by the East Semitic-speaking people, the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians, who succeeded and absorbed the Sumerians in the region. Her cult continued to flourish until its gradual decline between the 1st and 6th centuries CE in the wake of Christianity.
Yeah, you can't have women gods then.
No, right. Not when you have this god with a penis.
Right.
Inanna was the enforcer of divine justice. She destroyed Mount Ebeh for having challenged her authority.
A mountain?
Yeah.
Challenged her authority?
Apparently.
What a great story. Why isn't that in the Bible?
Yeah. Well, there's a better one I think you'll like too. She unleashed her fury upon the gardener Shukalatuda after he raped her in her sleep, and tracked down the bandit woman Bililu and killed her in divine retribution for having murdered Demuzid, her husband.
Are these people humans?
I have no idea. It sounds like bandit woman Bililu and probably the gardener probably were humans.
A human raped a goddess?
I mean, you've read Greek mythology.
Yeah, I know.
It's not that out there. Yeah.
That's true. And a human woman killed her husband?
Yeah. This is an interesting paragraph from her Wikipedia article. Individuals who went against the traditional gender binary were heavily involved in the cult of Inanna. During Samaritan times, a set of priests known as Gala worked in Inanna's temples. Men who became Gala sometimes adopted female names, and their songs were composed in the Sumerian Emsel dialect, which in literary texts is normally reserved for the speech of female characters. Some Sumerian proverbs seemed to suggest that Gala had a reputation for engaging in anal sex with men. During the Akkadian period, a couple names that I can't pronounce were servants of Ishtar who dressed in female clothing and performed war dances in Ishtar's temples. Several Akkadian proverbs seem to suggest that they may have also had homosexual proclivities. In one Akkadian hymn, Ishtar is described as transforming men into women.
Well, gotta bury that
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
No, that's super
I'm
cool.
surprised this was this died off when the Christians showed up.
We're gonna go off on a tangent if we keep talking about this, but like that's one of the infuriating things about this whole thing that's happening in the world right now against anybody who's like outside of like the normal, not even normal, like the Christian idealized man-woman relationship and gender identities. Because if you go back and you actually read fucking history for a really long time, nobody gave a fuck, honestly. I mean, they were just...
If anything, there's like certain cultures that might give a fuck that pop up and stuff like that. But it's not like it's the default for humanity to care about it.
Very obviously not.
No. You want to hear about Ishtar going into the underworld?
Sure.
So there's two versions of this. There's the Sumerian version and then there's the Akkadian version. But let's go through the Sumerian version because I feel like this is a little bit more complete. The underworld is ruled by Inanna's sister, Ishtar's sister.
Okay.
The goddess, it's her sister.
Spell it.
Ereshkigal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think my brain even understood the order of those letters.
Eerie. Yeah. So it's ruled by Inanna's sister before leaving. So how did this start? In the Sumerian religion, the Kur was conceived of as a dark, dreary cavern located deep underground. Life there was envisioned as a shadowy version of life. Yeah, so it doesn't say why she's going down there, but
so wait, so the underground basically was like it feels cinematic when you say that. That they believed that the underworld was just a shadowy version of life.
Life there was envisioned as a shadowy version of life on Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. That feels very intriguing and cinematic to me.
Yeah.
Way better than hell, honestly.
Right. I kind of again, I'm not Jewish. I don't really know what all details go into Sheol, but the Jewish idea of afterlife as Sheol, as I've seen it online, like as I've seen it described, it kind of sounds somewhat similar. Where we talked about like kind of like in Westworld, you go into this underground thing and everybody's just standing there is what it kind of sounds like.
Right.
But so many of these places though had a lot of crosstalk, with their stories about the afterlife and stuff. Anyway, Inanna's sister rules the underworld. Before leaving, Inanna instructs her minister and servant to plead with these deities to rescue her if she does not return after 3 days. The laws of the underworld dictate that, with the exception of appointed messengers, those who enter it may never leave. Inanna dresses elaborately for the visit. She wears a turban, a wig, lapis lazuli necklace, beads upon her breast, the pala dress, a ladyship garment of some sort, mascara, a pectoral, and a golden ring, and holds a lapis lazuli measuring rod. Inanna pounds on the gates of the underworld, demanding to be let in. The gatekeeper asks her why she has come, and Inanna replies that she wishes to attend the funeral rites of this person, the husband of my elder sister. Okay, so the husband of the sister that rules the underworld.
Oh, died.
I guess. And so he's there?
I know. Things get a little confusing there.
Right. Yeah. I don't.
Did he die in the underworld?
Doesn't he just respawn then? The guy reports that to her sister, who tells him to bolt the 7 gates of the underworld. Then, one by one, open each gate a crack. Let Inanna enter. As she enters, remove her royal garments. So following the instructions, this guy tells Inanna that she may enter the first gate of the underworld, but she must hand over her lapis lazuli measuring rod. She asks why, and is told it is just the ways of the underworld. She obliges and passes through. Inanna passes through a total of 7 gates, at each one removing a piece of clothing or jewelry she has been wearing at the start of her journey, thus stripping her of her power. When she arrives in front of her sister, she is naked. 7 judges rendered their decision against her. They looked at her. It was the look of death. They spoke to her. It was the speech of anger. They shouted at her. It was the shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. And then it says 3 days and 3 nights passed, and her assistant, her servant, followed her instructions, goes to these other gods and pleads with each of them to rescue Inanna. The first 3 deities refuse, saying Inanna's fate is her own fault. But Enki, who we've actually talked about before, and we'll probably talk a little bit about again, is deeply troubled and agrees to help. He creates 2 sexless figures from the dirt under the fingernails of 2 of his fingers.
Okay.
Yeah. He instructs them to appease the sister, and when she asks them what they want, ask for the corpse of Inanna, which they must sprinkle with food and water of life. When they come before the sister, she is in agony like a woman giving birth. She offers them what they want, including the life-giving rivers of water and fields of grain, if they can relieve her. But they refuse all of her offers and ask only for Inanna's corpse. They end up sprinkling Inanna's corpse with the food and water of life and revive her. Demons sent by her sister follow Inanna out of the underworld, insisting that someone else must be taken to the underworld as Inanna's replacement. They first come upon her servant and attempt to take her, but Inanna stops them, insisting that her servant is loyal and she had rightfully mourned for her while she was in the underworld. They next come upon Inanna's beautician.
Wow.
Yeah.
It says beautician.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, this is the Wikipedia summarization, not the actual text.
It's just,
anything,
I mean, but like,
yeah,
somehow they got to beautician.
Like this was
so
her
she's
job.
Got like, yeah, her hair and makeup girl.
Yeah. Who is still in mourning. The demons attempt to take him. Oh, it's him.
My bad.
Yeah. The demons attempt to take him, but Inanna insists that they may not because he had also mourned for her. Finally, they come upon Dumuzid, Inanna's husband.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not mourning.
I guess not. Despite Inanna's fate, and in contrast to the other individuals who were properly mourning her, Dumuzid is lavishly clothed and resting beneath a tree or upon her throne.
Oh, he got that fat insurance check.
Yeah.
He's living it up.
Yeah.
This isn't the same husband that she killed the bandit woman over, right?
Yeah. No, it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thought he was dead.
I mean, in that story, I don't know. Like that story probably comes after this one. I would imagine.
Sounds like he's going to hell.
I know. I don't really understand.
I guess I should wait to see how the story goes.
Continuity isn't really a big thing, I think, for them. So he's clothed lavishly, resting beneath a tree or upon her throne, entertained by slave girls. Inanna, Inanna, displeased,
of course,
decrees that the demons shall take him. So they then drag Dumuza down into the underworld.
This is a way better story than anything in the Bible.
Yeah. I know, this would have been way better. So much. This would have been way better.
So she dies.
Yes.
And then comes back to life 3 days later.
Yes, I know. And I picked up on that too. It was an interesting.
Yeah. And there's also water of life and food of life.
Yep.
Very much like the blood of Christ and the body of Christ.
Well, there's even the story of, I think it was when he was talking to the Samaritan, not Sumerian. Samaritan woman, where he described he has the water of life that, if you drink it, you'll never be thirsty again.
Oh, right. And I think we just assumed that was like,
it's just the message of being Christian
or something.
Yeah. But she seems to think he's talking about actual water,
right?
Because she's just a dumb woman. Or a dumb Samaritan, really, is probably.
Or both, a combination. It's just one of those lethal combinations.
Yeah. Not only is she a woman, she's a Samaritan woman.
Oh, the worst of the worst.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about Ishtar.
Okay.
She seems pretty cool. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing more about her. She should definitely get her own movie franchise. So as we'll get into when we eventually talk about the books of Kings and Chronicles, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrians, and then the southern kingdom of Judah was eventually conquered by the Babylonians.
Mm-hmm.
That has a huge impact on the stories that make it into the Bible as we have it today, like the Babylonian and Assyrian influences.
Right.
The Bible is literarily littered with Sumerian influences. So an example of this is with Moses, the story of Moses, where he's put into a basket of reeds and sent down the river, has no place in the overall story of Moses, besides explaining why, even though he's an Israelite leader and legend, really, why he has an Egyptian name.
Right.
That's the only purpose of that story.
Right.
If you read it, they never talk about him knowing the royal family or anything like that later on. It's not like the Prince of Egypt or anything like that. It's literally, it just is a standalone story. Like if you take it out, it's still the exact same story. Everything else stays the same. But that story seems to have been lifted from the origin of Sargon of Akkad, almost 1,000 years before Christians think Moses existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a quote actually from a text that claims to be Sargon's autobiography.
Right.
He says, "My high priestess mother conceived me. In secret she bore me. She set me in a basket of rushes. With bitumen she sealed my lid. She cast me into the river," which would have been the river Euphrates, "which rose over me. The river bore me up and carried me to Aki, the drawer of water. Aki, the drawer of water, took me as his son and reared me. Aki, the drawer of water, appointed me as his gardener. While I was a gardener, Ishtar granted me her love, and for 4 and missing text years, I exercised kingship." So that's likely where the story of Moses in the basket comes from.
Sure. I also just learned that if you wanted to fake an ancient text, you just need to repeat shit.
Yeah.
over and over,
and over
again.
Yeah. And then also there's the story of Noah, which seems to come from the story of Adrahasis. The synopsis of that basically is Enlil, the god of earth, assigns these junior gods to do farm work for him. After 40 years, they start complaining about it, and the gods all decide to create humans to do the work. The mother goddess, and I'm not kidding, her name is Mami.
Really?
Mami.
Huh.
Anyway, the mother goddess Mami creates the humans by shaping clay figurines mixed with the flesh and blood from a slain god. All of the gods then spit into the clay. After 10 months, a specially made womb breaks open and humans are born.
Sounds like the origins of Wonder Woman. She was also made from clay.
Yeah. So were humans, according to Genesis.
True.
Humans start overpopulating the planet. It's kind of interesting. Like, this is very much a story about overpopulation, actually.
Yeah.
This version of this. Humans start overpopulating the planet, and Enlil decides to destroy mankind with a flood. But another god, Enki, who came to the aid of Ishtar, is a kinder god towards humans. He tells Adrahasis to dismantle his house and build a boat to escape. Adrahasis builds the boat and boards it with his family and animals. After 7 days, the flood ends, and Adrahasis offers sacrifices to the gods, which is exactly what Noah does.
Yeah, except
in one version of the
except
story.
Noah had to do it for 40 days.
Yeah, but once he was off the boat, he ended up offering sacrifices.
Yeah, one of each of the animals he took on the.
Yeah, well,
thus negating the whole
Yeah.
purpose of taking 2 of each.
Yeah, if you remember though, there was 2 different stories cut up into each
Yes.
other for that. One version of the story though had him take 7 clean animals. I think it was 1 pair of unclean animals and 7 pairs of clean animals.
So you could sacrifice.
And in that version of the story, he was able to sacrifice to God afterwards.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, a note here, even humans were made out of clay, just like in Genesis.
Right.
It's,
Well, and like if you go back and read Greek mythology, right? Also very similar stories for a lot of these
yeah.
in there as well.
It also reminded me of the story with Jesus when he heals the blind man by spitting into clay and rubbing the clay on his eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it's these little things that like little echoes.
Right.
And then this is admittedly just something that I had kind of came up with.
Oh,
So
we're getting a Josh revelation
Yeah.
here.
Well, I always thought it was interesting, and I always wondered if Esther was related to Easter.
Okay.
We had a recent episode where we talked about Esther.
Yep.
It's the basis of the spring festival of Purim,
Yep.
which happens at around a month before Passover. And apparently most scholars put the authorship of Esther at the 4th century BCE, which would have been after the Babylonian exile. So they had the Assyrian exile, they've had the Babylonian exile, they've actually come back into Jerusalem now. And then they end up writing a bunch more of these texts that end up in the Old Testament, including Esther. And it actually makes a lot of sense to me since it's set in Persia and looks very favorably thank you, on the Persian king. And the Persians were the ones who defeated the Babylonians and allowed Israelites to return to their land and stuff. It seems like it's reasonable that maybe this had some Babylonian influences in there.
Sure.
And Ishtar might have been the inspiration for Esther.
Right.
But we'll come back to that. There are other thoughts I have on it. What that led me to, though, was an interesting thing that I had never known, like how did they officially decide on the books of the Old Testament, right? The books of the Hebrew Bible.
Right. Like what ones to keep and what ones to axe.
Yeah. And while I was going through this, I came across something called the Great Assembly. The Great Assembly, according to Jewish tradition, was an assembly of 120 scribes, sages, and prophets. So this started around 516 BCE to the early Hellenistic period, which would have been around 333 BCE. It comprised of prophets such as Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Daniel, Hananiah, Michelle, other names. So anyway, among the developments in Judaism that are attributed to the rabbis of this period are the fixing of the Jewish biblical canon, including the book of Ezekiel, Daniel, Esther, and the 12 minor prophets. The introduction of the Feast of Purim happened at this point too. So fixing the biblical canon for them was in this point. And adding the last of the books of the Bible.
And by fixing, you mean like fixing or like affixing?
It's really interesting because that's just the terminology that they used in the Wikipedia article around it, but they don't really explain what fixing means.
Right, because you can fix things by rewriting them and making them work for what you want them to work, or you could fix them by making them like, this is it.
Right, so, like it was an oral tradition and they wrote it down and they canonized it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know which way they would take that, but from the sound of it, they were literally writing these books, like these these last books during this time.
Right.
So in a way you could say that they were writing it. But like they might have been putting together, this might have been, for all we know, when we talked about the 4 different sources for the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, how they've been intricately cut together in some places.
Maybe when they did it.
Maybe this is when they did it, So we don't know. It might have been when they were working on the Deuteronomistic history, like we've been talking about with Joshua, how they went back and they added in warnings of the exile, saying, if you're not religious enough, God will kick you out of Israel, basically. And it's like, well, it's easy to do that when you're writing it later and just putting it into it as if it was always there. But so it was just this interesting thing. I never heard of this, the Great Assembly, but it's worth, I think, having on your radar that this is a thing where a lot of these beliefs come from, actually. Because this predates Christianity even, so this is like has an effect on what Jesus would have thought was true.
Right. Obviously, like one of the things that people who believe in the Bible as like the mainstay for their religion is that, I don't know, these books were written by the people who they're about, and like everyone collected them into a book, is the feeling that I get. I don't know if that's true, but growing up, that was always the kind of perception I had, is like the people who were religious read the Bible and they literally believed that these books were written by somebody who was there, and somebody at some point just put them all together into a book. But obviously, something like the Assembly, the Great Assembly or whatever, I mean, makes that entirely not true. I mean, I know it's not true to begin with, but when you have proof of like things in like the Nicene
Creed,
the convention.
The First Council of Nicaea.
Yes. That big con they had back in the day. The religious convention. Obviously, like, it's just a group of people getting together and kind of trying to agree on what message they're going to sell people.
Yeah. Well, at that one, they were determining whether or not Jesus was God incarnate.
Right.
Or if he was a prophet, essentially, because there was a bunch of Christians back then who thought Jesus was just a prophet, because with only a couple exceptions in the Gospels, he never says he's God.
Right.
And like I think the only time he does is in John, if I remember right, which was the latest of all the Gospels.
And if you love Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
And if you have not watched History of the World Part 2, there is a fun little skit about the Nicaea thing where they come together and try to decide things about the Bible. And it's got, I can't remember her name, but she's the comedian, and she's kind of like
Wanda Sykes.
No.
Oh.
No.
Wanda Sykes was in there.
Yes, but it's the blonde lady who plays Seth Rogen's wife in The Night Before.
Oh, God, what was her
name? I can't remember her name.
Samantha
She's also
something?
in Brittany Runs a Marathon. Anyway, she's basically like at the front of the room asking, like basically doing like a poll, like, do you think it should be this or you think it should be that? And it is a hilarious skit.
Yeah.
And I would definitely suggest everybody watch it.
Yeah. If you like this podcast, you would love a History of the World Part 2. It has a lot of what we talk about in there. I had some final thoughts around this stuff. So I love that what should be the most sacred Christian holiday could be based on pagan idolatry.
Sure. To me, in my brain, it definitely is.
Right. And when I sat down to compile the material for this episode, everything seemed to be pointing to that being the case. I had a whole rant written out about how this deity that was 4,000 years older than Jesus still had traditions ringing like a bell through the generations, and most people were unaware of it. And how that isn't the power of religion, but a sign of humanity's lack of imagination. That we don't invent, we recycle. And then the YouTube channel Religion for Breakfast posted a video on Easter and completely fucked my day up. Religion for Breakfast, I've talked about them before, is ran by Dr. Andrew M. Henry, who has a PhD in religious studies from Boston University. And from what I've seen, he has always put out fact-based, unbiased videos about religious topics. Okay. Right?
But is he funny?
But no, he's not particularly funny. And I don't think he's going for that, which is why I watch it so that you don't have to.
Thank you.
But you're more than welcome to look up his videos. They are very good. So he shoots down the entire idea that we get rabbits and eggs from Eostre, right? Saying that there's no evidence for it, which we kind of talked about with Wikipedia. It shows up in the 1600s.
Yeah,
so it's
somebody made that shit up at some point.
Right. There's nothing to hold that up. Yeah. He claims that literally all we get from Eostre is the name for Easter, and that's it. She probably did have an April festival, considering she had a month named after her, and it was the month of April, basically. Mm-hmm. But the goddess may not have been associated with fertility. We don't have any reason to think she was.
Sure.
And there's no indication of where the rabbits and eggs come from.
No.
We just don't know.
So
we have no clue where this came from.
Why include them in a religious holiday?
That's a good point. That's a good question. So he also says there's no evidence to connect Ishtar with Easter, which made me go back and look at some of the presumptions I made. Like, for example, when it came to Esther and stuff like that, I was like, oh, a spring festival and everything, it's got to be the same thing, basically, right? Ishtar, while she was the goddess of fertility, doesn't seem to have any association with spring.
Okay. Well, you can be fertile year-round, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which definitely doesn't help my theory that Esther and Easter have any sort of common connection.
No, they just sound the same.
Yeah. And maybe they came up with Esther maybe they came up with Esther from Ishtar, but I'm not sure there's a good reason to think that is the case either way. And he points out that a lot of the pagan theories come from a nutty Protestant preacher in the 1800s who put out a bunch of half-baked conspiracy theories that the Catholic Church was secretly turning Christians into pagans and some such bullshit like that.
Right. Okay.
So it's really kind of interesting how much of that did come from this one guy. So it might just be a big coincidence that Eostre, Ishtar, and Esther and Easter all have similar names. And I, as a reasonable atheist, have to accept that I had certain conceptions of what the history of this holiday was about, and they turned out to be misconceptions, which incidentally is my drag name.
I wish that were true. He's lying, but you don't know. You guys don't know how hard I want that to be true.
I feel like you would be like, if I was going to do drag, you'd be like, you can do a better name than that. Be a stage mom to your husband doing drag.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so then, and that's my final takeaway. Easter is supposed to be a celebration of Jesus sacrificing himself for the sake of humanity, and we hide colored eggs and eat chocolate bunnies, even though we have no idea why or who started it.
Right.
But we keep doing it anyway, every year, and people make a lot of money selling it to us, which, when you think about it, perfectly captures the true spirit of Easter. It doesn't matter what the rites and rituals are. It doesn't matter about the symbolism or the iconography. It doesn't matter what the purpose is behind it. As long as you keep buying those goddamn peeps every year and continue to live miserably ever after.
That's just the end of the podcast.
Doesn't have to be.
Okay.
This is just the end of my rant.
I was like, all right, well, I guess I don't get to say anything.
I know.
after
I realized that I was like, oh, I guess I just kind of wrapped it up with that. But
It's like the way right wingers and their fucking radio shows.
yeah. I forgot to get into frogs turning gay. This is a big thing with Alex Jones.
Yeah.
The water's turning the freaking frogs gay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as I can eat Cadbury cream eggs every year.
I know.
That's all
Yeah.
that's all that really matters.
Yeah. So yeah, it sucks because like I want it to be true. I want it to be that.
Well,
you
it
know,
makes sense. It makes sense, right?
yeah.
Rabbits fuck a lot and they have a lot of offspring,
Yeah.
right? Eggs are the symbol of birth, right?
Yeah.
So, which are very spring, like the renewing of the earth sort of things.
And you've got the grass too.
Yeah,
and
the Easter grass,
Easter
like
eggs.
lambs, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I get lambs are a little bit easier to translate into Christianity because Jesus was a lamb.
Yeah, and you sacrifice lambs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't sacrifice them, you eat them. But
Yeah. Well, they sacrifice
Oh,
lambs.
well.
You know.
these days we eat them. So, I mean, obviously, in any logical mind who sits back and thinks about it for like a hot second, like it would make sense that like these traditions were taken from something else.
Yeah.
Did Jesus have an egg in his ass when he got crucified? If not, then eggs have no place in your holiday.
No. He had an egg in his ass when he rose from the dead.
Was there a rabbit
Yeah.
that popped out of the cave when they rolled back the stone? If not, rabbits have no place in your holiday.
Right.
And it's irritating as a atheist to see these holidays and know that a majority of people will be doing Easter egg hunts
Yeah.
and not going to church. Even Christians, especially Christians.
Especially Christians. Yeah. I mean, why would you go to church if you weren't a Christian?
You know, growing up, the people who did go to church consistently, they would skip the holiday masses because those
too many tourists.
too many weekend warriors there, right? Too many holiday only people would be there. There were too many people there, so they would skip the big ones.
Yeah.
And they would do their fucking Easter egg hunts and eat their goddamn chocolate bunnies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. And so you want it to be like you stole this from somebody. You guys co-opted these traditions from people that you converted into Christianity, and now you've just implemented them into your holiday, and Cadbury's making a lot of money off this bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of disappointing to like get to the kind of end of it and realize that that's probably not the case.
Right.
And that some dudes just made it up at some. I'm just sick of dudes making shit up and everybody buying into it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's so unsatisfying that we don't have an origin for it at all.
Right.
Like it just started and people just keep doing it.
Right.
It's a weird compulsion that we have.
Really
because
is.
it like this is why I'm so against tradition.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so stupid to keep doing stuff just because the ancestors did that.
Right.
You know? If you don't know why you're doing something, maybe you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You know? But,
well, and
I mean, it's fun. You know,
sure.
it's fun
I love
for
chocolate
kids.
Easter bunnies. I love Cadbury cream eggs.
Yeah, and that's
Easter
cool.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Stop eating them.
Right. We can do it any time of the year, though. You know.
True. They don't make Cadbury cream eggs the other times of the year, though. Josh.
Right.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Halloween now you get Cadbury cream eggs. That's it.
Yeah.
And they're green on the inside. And that grosses me out a little bit.
Are they still the same thing though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just dyed green on the inside.
Yeah. Ugh, I don't want food dye in my Cadbury cream egg.
Your very highly processed sugar egg.
Yeah.
In the commercials where they
Sugar
imply
group.
that a rabbit actually did fuck a chicken.
It's a rabbit that balks like
Yeah.
a chicken.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Josh and I for Easter will be doing likely nothing
Yeah.
because I don't have a reason to celebrate this holiday.
You might have my mom over because she likes to be around family. You're not gonna give Connor a Easter basket?
No, there are women in his life who will give him that stuff, and I'm grateful for them because it's not his own mother.
Yeah.
Because even from a young age, we did not celebrate Easter in any sort of meaningful way. We even stopped hiding Easter eggs after a while because, listen, when you're in a household where you're the only one who wants to color the eggs, you just don't want to do it anymore after a while.
Right. Yeah.
Because that was supposed to be part of the fun of it. And the idea of hiding and then having to find hard-boiled eggs is kind of gross.
Yeah. I also have never understood, like, why is that fun for kids? Like, hard-boiled eggs aren't especially a treat.
No.
You know?
They don't eat them.
I thought they did, but...
No. They find them and then get candy.
Yeah.
I think is the thing.
Parents probably end up eating the hard-boiled eggs, I would imagine.
I feel like in my house they were turned into like egg salad sandwiches.
Yeah, I just always thought that was kind of a weird thing. Like, it makes more sense to me when they do the plastic ones that are like full of candy.
Money inside.
Money, yeah. Candy and stuff. Anyway, with that, continue to live miserably ever after. Happy Easter. Or unhappy Easter.
Or like happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Happy generic Sunday.
Happy podcast day.
Happy new BSFA day. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us share the good news by sending this to a friend or leaving a review to help others find us. And if you want to support us with a donation, you can do that on our website at bsfa.cc. So strap in and strap on for episode 44, Chocolate Covered Zombie Jesus.
Brains.
Chocolate covered brains.
Cadbury cream.
Cadbury cream brains. We're gonna get sued by Cadbury.
Bring it on, bitches.
Click, delete.